All right, ladies and gentlemen, Fabs in the house, and welcome back to the channel. On the table today is the Rollei 35 SE. This is the top tier electronic meter version of the famous Rollei 35 compact camera. And I'm gonna go ahead and check it out with you. I'm gonna tell you all the tech specs, all the information that you need to know to decide if you want to buy, if you want this, if this is for you, if this is gonna work for you. So anyways, leather pouch with the wrist strap going into straight this hole, very soft and a little padded, so it's gonna definitely protect your camera. This is it, and this is how I carry pretty much. So the Rollei 35 family splits in two groups. You have the high-end models with the Tessar or Sonnar lenses and a CDS meter, which are the Rollei 35, 35T Tessar, 35S Sonnar, 35TE and 35SE, which are the electronic ones. And later there's the 35 Classic and the 35 Metric, but they are pretty expensive. They are well over $1,000. So the economy models are equipped with the Triotar lenses, and they have simpler shutters and simpler meters, and they are called C35, B35, also called 35B and 35 LED. So all of them can shoot full frame 35mm film, and they share some basic idea. You know, it's a tiny dense body with a collapsible 40mm lens and a zone focusing. The main review here is for this model over here, 35 SE, but we'll walk through how it differs from each of the other versions, and I'm going to include some hard specs along the way. So the camera on the table is the SE version. So Sonnar, which you can actually see if I remove this filter better. Sonnar 2.8, 40mm. This also, by the way, this is a Rollei R15. I believe this is a Skylight 30.5mm filter, which is like mostly protective. They differ for the built-in period, the numbers of the production. This SE is, of course, made in Singapore from 79 to 81. There's around 150,000 units for this version over here. 24 by 36mm frames is the standard 35mm film that this set of Rollei they're using. Lens is a collapsible card size Sonnar. The focal length is 40mm. This is licensed by Rollei, so you push this button right over here and locks in place, and you see the this lever coming up. Same thing, push down, twist counterclockwise and push it back. So collapsible lens makes the camera very compact. I mean, it's already compact by itself. If you want to know some precise measurements, here I have the caliper to tell you that it's 96mm in height. And if we don't count this part over here, let's say just the chassis is going to be 64. And if we count the lens as well, it's going to be 45mm. So tiny camera. You cannot complain about the size of this bad boy. The maximum aperture, as I said, is f2.8. The minimum aperture is f22, and you get it right over here. You see right over there. The filter thread is 30.5mm in diameter. There is 0.5mm in pitch. The shutter is a Rollei Compor leaf shutter, and you have the speeds over here from half of a second to 500 of a second. So it goes from, and of course, B pose. The aperture has, full stop markings from 2.8 to f22, but it's continuous. So there's no indexing, there's no detent, only of course, for the shutter speed. You see that, you feel and you hear kind of the detent. The metering and the exposure system is a couple CDS photocell, and in this case you have the sensitivity that is set in this dial over here, and that it goes from 25 ASA to 1600 ASA, or DIN also from 15 to 33. The battery compartment, so the aperture and the shutter dials on the front are mechanically linked to the meter that is in this case is using 3 LEDs inside of the viewfinder, and the battery compartment is also, oops, this guy, there's no batteries at the moment, but because of course you cannot use this battery over here, you have to use a little trick that it works. You can use, for example, 3 LR44 and 1 LR43, so which is a little bit thinner, but stacked up it gives you like 6 volts, which is a little bit more than 5.6, I know, but it's gonna make up for the length of the battery right over here. And I also recommend maybe the silver oxide batteries to keep a more stable release of the energy. But anyways, the PX27 Mercury pack, it's around 5.6 volts, and it's gone. It's discontinued because of the mercury, I believe. So the battery just sits here in this kind of drawer and pops out, as you saw, like that, in the top plate. On the bottom, oddly, you see a hot shoe. Yeah, this is a hot shoe on the bottom with X-Sync, which is oddly placed on this side. Everything is odd in this camera. As you can see, the lever also is on the kind of left side. You have a viewfinder. I don't know if you can see, but it's pretty bright, I have to say. There's bright lines. There's no focusing aid. Just the 3 LEDs exposure indicators are inside, visible at the same on the side of the frame. 2 red for under and overexposure, and 1 green to indicate that exposure is correct. There's parallax marks, if you can see, not really, but they are there. Like for close focusing, you get a little bit of a hint of where your framing is going to be. So you got to be, kind of guessing. It's some guesswork, of course. 335 grams in this standard trim. If you have, the aluminum covers is going to be 310 grams. Usually you can find this in black or chrome, but there's some aluminum covers, in some bodies to reduce the weight, like about 20 grams. Underneath all these chassis, there is a fully mechanical camera. The shutter and aperture work with no power, and that's the beauty of the camera. The battery is only for the meter and the LED indication. How is to handle and what's the meter logic on the 35 SE? So the SE uses the same clever control logic that you read about this camera. It's a left front wheel from the shooter side is the shutter speed, from half of a second to 500 of a second plus bulb function. You have a film reminder right over here, counter, sorry, and the reminder is in the center of the dial. That is pretty cool. This is not functional, so you have just negative, black and white, color, negative, color, tungsten, and color daylight. So these are the markings in this dial over here. The right front wheel is just the aperture from 2.8 to f22. The ISO dial in the center, it's ASA, so from 25 to 1600, and these are the main, very simple controls. So to meter a scene, you have pressed the shutter release, and the LED stack, red, green, red, appears in the finder. So if the lower red greens glows, you know, it's too dark. If the then you simply, you know, push the top edge of either front dial upward, and that's very logical because you see that is the lower LED, so you push it upward. That's very intuitive. So this movement increases the exposure, of course, and the LED just climbs up to the green spot, which means you're good to go. If the upper LED is red and glowing, it means the scene is overexposed. So you just pull the far edge of the wheel down. So it means you have to just close. So just pull this up. So you're gonna close the aperture, or samely like that, you're gonna, you know, rotate this way, and you're gonna increase the shutter speed. So it's gonna make it darker, of course, and the LED is gonna go down to green, and that means you're correctly exposed. So you never have to look at the top plate or drop the camera from your eye. So you're gonna be like this, and you're gonna go by feel with these two levers. And it's pretty clever. As long as you know which control you prefer to adjust for a given shot, you know, the physical gesture maps directly to what you see in the finder, which makes the SE extremely fast once you get that muscle memory, you know, locked down. The Sonnar 40mm 2.8 HFT is the lens to go, in my opinion, because of course it's sharp. It has a pretty high resolution, especially in the center at all apertures. The corners are a little bit soft, wide open, and they sharpen up nicely by 5.6 f8. They're gonna be pretty much good to go. It's contrasty. The color is very strong overall, and has a very cool micro contrast. So it's the lens to go. It's pretty saturated. Especially, you know, if you pick a modern color negative or even modern slide film, it's gonna be good to go. You're not gonna be dissatisfied. There is a mild barrel distortion, which is usually not visible in normal scenes. So you're not, you know, it's a 40mm, so it's not like a 14mm. It kind of becomes noticeable if you have straight lines near the frame edges at close focus. Yeah, you're gonna see some distortion. The flare is well controlled. You know, the HFT coating controls general haze fairly well, and you can get visible flare and ghosting if you shoot directly into the sun. Remember that. You know, many film shooters actually like that as part of the character of the lens. The bokeh of this lens makes is kind of smooth, wide open. You know, it looks kind of slightly vintage, especially if you have a subject that is like at the medium distance. This is pretty easily one of the best lenses ever put on a truly pocket-sized full-frame camera. Remember that. All the Rollei 35 cameras, including the SE, they only use zone focus. So there's no rangefinder patch, there's no focusing screen, there's nothing. Focus is set by distance scale and depth of field markings on the lens, as you can see. So there's distance scales in meter and feet, the depth of field markings around the top of the lens barrel. Typically, you know, how to shoot is just pick an aperture around f8, for example. You just do like so. You set the focus so that the depth of field markers, you know, straddle from a couple meters out to infinity. So you're gonna be, you know, something like that. It's gonna be from f8 is gonna be infinity to 4 or 5 meters. If you want to do f16, for example, bam, you zone focus f16, and you're gonna be down to 2 meters, and that is, as you can see, right, and that is pretty much the way to go. So you don't have to worry. If you're in daylight, you shoot like 400 ISO film, you're gonna be shooting without touching the focus ring unless your subject is really, really close. So you just meter, adjust exposure with the front wheel and the LED in the viewfinder as you go. So this method works best outdoors, of course, in reasonable light, clearly. Indoors, f2.8, you need to calculate, estimate the distance between you and the subject, or you can do tape measure mindset kind of deal, or you can use, for example, this accessory over here, which is an external rangefinder, which is pretty useful. Or if you are a little bit more nerdy, you can use a laser rangefinder. Just make sure you line it up with the focal plane of the film, which is this one, and then you're gonna be pretty accurate in measuring the distance from your subject to the actual film. So these are the best methods, to focus with this kind of camera, because you have pretty much no aid whatsoever. The viewfinder itself is a strong point of the series. It's fairly large for such a tiny body. It's bright, simple, bright frame, and also has parallax marks. So there are a few global design details that apply to all high-end Rollei version, including the SE. The series was first made in Germany and later in Singapore. From 1971 onward, a lot of production shifted to Singapore. Service techs report that quality control in Singapore was as good as in Germany, so practically the quality is the same. Singaporean Rollei 35 bodies appeared with two different Tessar type lenses depending on the variant. Remember that. Some has the Schneider S-Xenar 40mm 3.5 lenses. Other had Carl Zeiss branded Tessars. The viewfinder is a bright line type with no focusing aid at all. At the end of 1970, the viewfinder was redesigned and the magnification changed from about 0.8 times to about 0.6 2 times to give a wider field. Early exposure systems used the match needle on top of the top part of the camera, where the aperture and shutter controls were mechanically linked to a moving pointer. Later cameras like this SE and the TE were replaced by the LED indications in the finder. With that, groundwork done, we can now, go model by model and compare all the specs and all the differences. So, Rollei, the original Rollei 35, is the first version and the base for the later T and S models. From 1966 to 1974 is the production period. About 312,000 units from the Germany version, and about 215,000 units from Singapore. Around 30,000 Singapore units carried the Schneider S-Xenar lens, which is kind of become like a rare one. Same format throughout all Rollei 35, of course. Collapsible Carl Zeiss Tessar 40mm 3.5. It was coated. On the deliveries to the Eastern Bloc market, the same lens was marked Opton TE or Schneider Kreuznach S-Xenar 40mm 3.5. Again, coated. Filter thread is the same, 24mm diameter with 0.5 pitch. The shutter is a Rollei Compro leaf shutter, so speed from 1/2 of a second to a 500 of a second, plus the B-pose. Diaphragm, the aperture is 3.5 to f22. Flash hot shoe at the bottom, X synchronization, meter was coupled CDS photo element. The film sensitivity was from 25 to 1600. The battery was a PX13 or PX625 mercury cell, nominal 1.35 volt, different than this one. The battery sits inside the film chamber, and other features are the double exposure prevention mechanism is in place, and the color finish black or chrome with black leatherette are the actual finishes that are available. Same dimension and about 370 grams. The differences between this bad boy is that the Tessar or X-Sonnar lenses at f3.5 instead of the Sonnar f2.8 on this bad boy, match needle instead of the LED, battery inside the chamber instead of a top drawer, heavier body with a, a couple 20-30 grams heavier than this one. Same bottom hot shoe and general layout. So the SE takes that original body and adds the faster Sonnar and the finder and a meter inside the finder. Then you have the Rollei 35T. T is essentially renamed the original Rollei 35 produced after the Sonnar 35S arrived. From 1974 to 1980, around 440,000 units from Singapore with a collapsible card Zeiss Tessar 40mm 3.5 coated. There is an extra UV filtering layer added, and the lens is manufactured by Rollei under Zeiss license. Finish and weight is pretty much the same, chrome and black. From 1977, some cameras had aluminum covers to reduce the weight of about 30 grams from the previous model. So basically the difference between this bad boy which is in my opinion, the best 35 Rollei that you can buy. Same body concept. The Tessar, 3.5 instead of the Sonnar. There's no LED readout, only match needle top of the plate. Internal P625 style battery instead of the external P27 pack. If you like the original meter layout and prefer a Tessar signature, this is the conservative choice. The SE is the more modern, fastest lens version. There is a Rollei 35S, which upgrades the 35T with the Sonnar lens, basically, and giving the external match needle meter layout. The production period is from 1974 to 1980, and there's around 260,000 units, all from Singapore, with a collapsible Sonnar 40mm 2.8 HFT coated, made again by Rollei under license from Zeiss. Some bodies also appeared, with a Tessar 40mm 3.5 made under license. The filter thread changes to 30.5mm with 0.5 pitch. Again, this guy. Same finish, the weight is 345 grams, so we are kind of like in the same ballpark. There also is a Platin special edition, which I love it. I believe it says special edition 1986, and there's 444 units marked in the back. The production was from 1986 to 1987 by Rollei Phototechnik in Germany this time. The platinum plated covers and bright lizard leather are amazing, but this is gonna command, I would say, $4,000 or $5,000 because of the rarity. It's incredible. 444 units, are you kidding me? The versus between the 35SC in question right over here is that the same Sonnar designs, there's no LED meter in the finder, use the older top plate with the match needle and internal PX625 style battery. It's slightly heavier base weight. The meter handling, though, is completely different. On the 35S, you set all the controls looking down at the top plate, not through the finder. The SE is essentially the 35S concept updated with the internal finder LED and external battery drawer. Remember that. There is also another variant, which is the Rollei 35TE. The TE is the Tessar counterpart of this bad boy. Production period from 1979 to 1980 with around 120,000 units from Singapore with a coupled CDS photo element LED exposure display in the viewfinder like this guy. Same film sensitivity, batteries PX27 mercury packed at about 5.6 volts. The color finishes are the same and the weight is around 330 grams for the standard finish and around 305 grams with the models with the aluminum cover. Tessar 40mm 3.5 lens has a UV coating, and the 35 family shutter and body. So basically the difference are just with this guy is just a slower Tessar. Otherwise, identical meter style, LED layout, battery type, and control logic. So if you like the meter experience of the SE and prefer the Tessar, get that bad boy. It's a little bit darker, but still. Next up is the Rollei 35 Classic, which I'm drooling. I love that. So after Rollei went bankrupt in 1982, a successor company called Rollei Phototechnic recovered the 35 SE and the 35 TE tooling from Singapore and took it back to Germany. In 1990, they launched the Rollei 35 Classic, and with a built-in smaller runs for a more exclusive market. Production period of this bad boy right over here is from 1990 to 2014. Production number for the Titan version is about 6,480 units. The Platinum version is about 1,120 units. The Black Metal, which is phenomenal version, is about 1,620 units. So the Flash moved to the top plate. The X-Syncs was retained, the LED system from the SE was gone, and the meter reverted to the classic match needle readout on the top plate. The color and the leatherette vary by model and by custom order. You could even do a custom order. And the dimension are increased to about 144 by 70 millimeters, so a little bit heavier for the 370 grams. There is also a classic gold 75th anniversary version produced in about 900 units around 1995. And the difference between this SE are that's the newer German-built, slightly larger and heavier body, made in Germany on the back, top plate meter needle instead of LED inside the finder, and the hot shoe is on the top rather than on the bottom. It's essentially a premium reissue that mixes SE era mechanics with original era ergonomics. I would pretty appreciate the hot shoe on the top. Then there's the Rollei 35 Metric, which is a specialized version of the classic for photogrammetric measurements. That was produced from 1991 to 2000 with the unknown production number, but it's rare. Lens is the Sonnar 40mm 2.8 HFT coated, made by Rollei, again under license, fixed at infinity focus and does not collapse. Remember that's the major difference. Chrome top and bottom covers with black metal panels between. The same dimensions, and the differences between these are, same Sonnar lens, but fixed at infinity, not collapsible. The body is deeper and designed for scientific work, not really for general photography. Includes a calibrated glass mask in the film gate that imprints small crosses into each frame for measurement. The metric is not intended as a normal carry camera at all, so just forget about that. There's the entry level, which are including a Triotar models, and I'm gonna go really quickly with those. There's the Rollei C35, the simplest of the compact series from 1969 to 1971, about 9,000 German-made units. There's one thing is that it's different, and that's the collapsible Triotar 40mm 3.5 coated 3 elements design made by Rollei under Zeiss license with a 24mm diameter filters. Same Rollei leaf shutter from 1/30th to 1/500th of a second plus B pose. Aperture 3.5 to 22, hot show on the bottom, you have 0 metering, no meter at all, double exposure prevention of course, Chrome with black leatherette is the only finish that is available, and it's kind of 270 grams, so it's pretty much the lightest of the bunch. The Rollei B35, also labeled 35B, is the metered Triotar model from 1969 to 1978. Production numbers are around 78,000 units from Germany and around 213,000 from Singapore. Uncoupled selenium cell. The field sensitivity goes to 25 to 1600. Chrome or black finish, so you have two options. Weights around 170 grams, and with aluminum cover about 250 grams. Sorry, 270 grams and 250 grams, so 220 grams lighter. There's lastly, the Rollei 35 LED, which has a production period from 1978 to 1980, with the production number around 157,000 for the Singapore factory. There's a coupled silicon photodiode meter, and the film sensitivity is the same. 3 LED exposure indicators in the viewfinder, like this one, 2 red, 1 green, similar concept to the SE. PX27 mercury pack, about 5.6 volt, but because people complained about the battery drain, later production added an extra enabling switch inside the release button mechanism, so the meter is not always active. That was a pretty clever addition. Color are, I believe, just black, and it weighs around 240 grams. So these, are all the Rollei 35 family versions that you can actually buy on the market. If you scavenge on eBay or Marketplace or Reddit or whatever forum you like to go, you can find all of them and collect them and try the one that you prefer. So this is my favorite one because it's the Rollei 35 SE. It's the fastest lens ever put on the original tiny Rollei body. The 40mm Sonnar f2.8 with HFT coating. This one has the most intuitive metering system in the series, coupled CDSL, 3 LED in the finder. It has a fully mechanical shutter and aperture with leaf shutter speeds from 1/2 of a second to 500 of a second, plus BPOS. True pocket size, excellent build quality from Singapore factory. Compared to the earlier models, you gain, finder meter, you get more information, external battery drawer. Compared with the TE, you gain the Sonnar lens. Compared to the C35, B35 LED, you move from an economy Triotar, which is whatever, platform, to the fully specified high-end chassis. If you accept zone focus and if you are happy working mostly in daylight with medium apertures, this guy is one of the most complete and capable pocket film cameras ever made, and arguably the sweet spot of the entire Rollei 35 family. So there you have it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Stay tuned.